So last night we had the third Democratic presidential debate. This one with 10 candidates total instead of 10 candidates across two nights happened on just one night. And this was actually, in just about every sense, the best debate so far. And I'll tell you who I think did well. I'll tell you what I think the impact of it will be. But as far as a debate goes, yes, the ABC Univision moderators still asked cartoonishly stupid questions, which I will discuss. But I had sort of complained on Twitter, 3 hours. Do we really need 3 hours of debate, particularly when at most of these 25 minutes go by before the first question is even asked, between sports like introductions and an immediate commercial break and a video montage and opening statements? You don't get to the first question very often until nearly 30 minutes in. They didn't do that. They started with the first question very, very quickly, or at least opening statements. It ended actually like 20 minutes shy of the 3 hour mark. And in the end, all the other debates had gone long. This one went short and was far more substantive. They spent, I think it was the first 30 to 35 minutes of questions, I'm going from memory here, was just healthcare. Did we learn an insane amount about everybody's healthcare plans? Maybe not. But what did happen, and this is the whole point, when you spend more time on one topic, even when it is 10 people on the stage, which is a whole other problem, even if you don't get that much more detail from most people about their plans, it starts to become clear who has nothing more than just 2 or 3 bullet points about what they would do. Joe Biden starting to stumble about the dynamics of if you can afford it or if you can't afford it or whatever else the case may be. Elizabeth Warren, who had been accused of backing off of Medicare for all, at least in rhetoric during yesterday's debate, coming back fully and saying Medicare for all is the way, very astutely rebutting this idea that taxes would go up by saying very clearly, yeah, but who cares if taxes go up? The total cost goes down because you don't have premiums and copays and all of this other stuff. Let's talk about some of the different elements of this that I think will impact it overall. Let me get out of the way. The moderators did a better job than in many previous debates, and by focusing longer periods of time on one issue, they were playing a role of furthering depth on some topics, including climate change and healthcare, et cetera. But there was still no shortage of completely ridiculous questions. At one point, asking Bernie Sanders to say, hey, you're a socialist and Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela is a socialist. What do you make of that? And then Bernie Sanders having to explain different types of socialism. This actually, I said it on Twitter and some people agreed with me. Some people went after me. Bernie's policy, if Bernie's a democratic socialist privately, okay, maybe he is. Bernie's policies are social democratic policies in line with capitalist countries in Northern Europe that are well regulated and use the fruits of the capitalist system to disproportionately help the least among us. That's Bernie's policy. And this is one of those things where I've been saying it for years at this point, and like 75% of my audience is with me, 25 is not. If he all along just said, I considered myself a democratic socialist in my youth or whatever, or not even mentioned that, I'm a social democrat. My policies are in line with countries that are capitalist countries. Nicolas Maduro and that form of faux populist so-called socialism, whatever, it has nothing to do with what I'm doing. And to even suggest a comparison is absolutely absurd. He can't do that because he does call himself a socialist and then he has to make finer distinctions. Whatever. The question was ridiculous. Didn't further our understanding at all of Bernie Sanders' platform. They asked Cory Booker about, is he going to push his vegan diet on everyone? I'm paraphrasing here. Just ridiculously stupid question, but potentially a missed opportunity for Cory Booker, where he could have talked about animal welfare. He could have talked about the importance of diet. I mean, he could have been self-humanizing in some way, and it ended up just being a stupid question and kind of a non-answer. Now, one of the bigger narratives that I was paying attention to, which is a real narrative, unlike corporate media often foments totally bogus narratives nobody cares about. I think it was before the second debate, CNN was pushing, what will happen when Buttigieg and O'Rourke go against each other? It's like nothing, no one cares about that. They're each polling 2%. Totally fabricated narrative. There was a real question yesterday. There were really two primary questions for me. Number one, to what degree would Bernie and Warren, who are the two progressive frontrunners, Biden, of course, being more of a center-left frontrunner, would Bernie and Warren start to go against each other to any degree to try to distinguish themselves from each other, often just being lumped together as the two progressives. The other question was, would Bernie and Warren, either together or separately, start to go after Joe Biden now that he is sort of within striking range? And the answer was Bernie went against Biden way harder than Warren. And I may just not be remembering, but I don't really remember Warren going after Biden at all, maybe once sort of lightly. But Bernie went after Biden on the Iraq war vote. Bernie went after Biden on health care. And some of those moments were arguably Bernie's best moments. Now, what did not go so well for Bernie, he unfortunately either had some kind of bronchitis or was just hoarse from so many events, but he had like a half lost voice. He didn't lose his voice, but particularly the first half of the debate, his voice was not strong. And by sheer, you could say it's chance, or if you're more conspiratorial, you could say it's because ABC wanted to help Elizabeth Warren. Very often, both Bernie and Warren would rebut what Joe Biden would say. But it would almost always be Elizabeth Warren who got the first opportunity. And as I've said before, even though they come from different political backgrounds, Bernie and Warren end up very similar on policy, and thus their rebuttals to Joe Biden were very, very similar. And merely by virtue of Elizabeth Warren getting the first rebuttal against Biden and Bernie Sanders getting the second rebuttal, which often contained 90% the same substance, and Bernie had half lost his voice, I think the optics were much stronger for Elizabeth Warren in terms of giving her perspective, even though, as I said, she didn't really attack Biden in the way that some thought maybe she would be doing. One thing that became very clear, and again, this is why we want more depth, and I would want way more with fewer candidates on stage. When you spend 40 minutes on one topic and you actually are put in a position where you have to go seventh and explain what is your policy, one dead giveaway that you don't really have a policy that's unique in any way is when the candidate would be asked, like the sixth person would say, okay, what is your position on what should happen with trade? And they just talk about how Trump is doing things that are bad and restate very general principles. On trade, this became very, very transparent. With a number of different candidates, there was no, Kamala Harris on trade had nothing unique or relevant to say. She criticized Trump. It's like, you're running against each other to go against Trump. You all disagree with Trump. I would limit the amount that you're attacking Trump at this point in the third debate, and had nothing particularly interesting to talk about. With regard to trade. There were a lot of examples of this. A strong moment for Beto O'Rourke was when he was asked, are you going to just confiscate AK-47s and AR-15s, or what are you going to do? And it was sort of a right-wing framing of the gun question, but I respect Beto for saying, yes, we are. We are going to confiscate them. Other countries have done it. What's going on here is a disaster. We are going to confiscate some of those really deadly weapons. The pro-gun crowd is going to hate it either way. The pro-gun crowd is going to say that the entire debate was filled with people that want to grab guns, even if they don't say it. Even if you don't agree with the policy, I actually respect Beto for saying it. Andrew Yang had his best debate by far. And I got a lot of emails from Yang Gang people who felt that he didn't do so well. I think he actually did his best. Where he suffered is he's almost too polite, and he will stop short of his full speaking time rather than going over it. And this was one of the reasons why his speaking time was low. Also, they just don't go to him nearly as often. He made a joke at the beginning when talking about healthcare about, I'm Asian, so I know a lot of doctors or something like that. And I actually do find it funny when he says stuff like that. When he says, I'm the opposite of Trump, I'm an Asian guy who likes math or whatever. I don't know if it actually endears him to people, or if it's just kind of a thing you hear a candidate say where it feels like they're trying to get attention. I'm sort of blind to it because I'm so sucked into this stuff. So I'd be curious what you think about that. On speaking time, Biden and Warren got the most, followed by Booker, then Bernie, Kamala Harris, Mayor Pete, Castro, Klobuchar, Beto, and Yang with the least speaking time, not surprisingly. Overall, I believe Elizabeth, I don't know who won it. It was less clear in this case. I think Elizabeth Warren did really well. I think Andrew Yang had his best debate so far. Julian Castro was very strong on a number of issues, including immigration and criminal justice reform. Senator Bernie Sanders was strong, said the right things, but again, was diminished with the hoarse voice and by virtue of having to go second after Warren in a lot of the rebuttals. But those are the four that I think did the best. Some people on Twitter yesterday were saying Kamala Harris crushed it. I don't know what debate you watched. I didn't see Kamala Harris crush anything. But in the end, I don't expect big polling moves other than maybe within the top three. And the reason why is Warren, Biden, and Bernie have substantive records on policy beyond everybody else on stage. They have pre-existing bases of support. They have sort of different visions generally about how they would govern. And they have constituencies that just don't really allow that much room for other candidates. So quite frankly, there's not that much support for the other candidates to gain because the top three now have solid bases of support. We will see how the polls change between now and the fourth debate, which will be, again, a two-night thing with 11 candidates, October 15th and 16th. I think it is a mistake to be adding more candidates. We should be culling them even more. But alas, that is not the case. Warren, Castro, Yang, Bernie, not in any particular order, the winners of last night's debate. Agree with me, disagree, let me know. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. Today's program brought to you in part by Blinkist.com/Pakman. Blinkist is a great service that I use all the time. What they do is they take thousands of the most popular nonfiction books, including the newest bestsellers. They condense them into 15-minute audiobooks that you can listen to, and you still get the most crucial information and insights from each book. And I've listened to a ton of books on Blinkist. I recently checked out Soccernomics by Simon Cooper. We do have, after all, the World Cup going on recently. We also have been talking about BS Jobs, and there is a great new book, BS Jobs by David Graeber, which I listen to on Blinkist. They're constantly adding new books to the platform. You will never run out of fascinating and critically acclaimed books to enjoy. And our audience can get a 7-day free trial by going to Blinkist.com/Pakman. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm putting a link in the video description. And after the free trial, if you like it, you can continue enjoying thousands of condensed audiobooks for about $5 a month. That's BLINKIST.com/PAKMAN.